Hello again and welcome back to another video where I'm going to be talking about some differences between my home country and my current country of residence. A little while ago, I watched a video from Patricia B, who is now Patty Lynn, I believe is her pseudonym online, but she was talking about things that she had never seen before she lived in France. So we're both from the US, we're from different parts of the US if I remember right. I'm from the Midwest, kind of the St. Louis area, and now I live in France, specifically Paris. So that's my experience. I thought this sounded like a really fun idea because it's kind of similar to some of the videos I've made in the past, but it's a little more specific, and it's also something that made me think a lot about what I have experienced here for the first time, not just things I experienced in general, because I also lived in the UK before I lived here. So there are some things that actually are different from my experiences in the US, but I experienced them in the UK, and then moving to France, I found that they were the same between France and the UK. So I had to think a lot about, like, okay, this thing was definitely something I didn't do when I was growing up, but where did I experience it first? Where is it normal? There's a lot of like thinking I had to put into it, but I've come up with 5 things that I think it's pretty safe to say I experienced for the very first time here in France. As usual, I have to say a tiny disclaimer. I'm not saying that these things don't exist in the US. I'm not saying that these things exist everywhere in France or that they don't exist anywhere except France. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that it was not my experience growing up in the US, but I did experience it for the first time here. So that's all I'm saying. Because of that, I would love it if you would leave in the comments below where you live or where you have lived, and if these things were super common there too, or if these things are very unusual for you, you've never heard of them. I would love it if you leave in the comments below and I can kind of figure out where we have similarities, dissimilarities. Even after years of living abroad, I am still constantly fascinated. Let's start off with one of the most classically French traditions, and that is having a drink on a terrace. This is really common in lots of different European countries, I know that, but in France it's the thing to do. You have your morning coffee or you have a drink after work and you do it outside on a terrace, and it's super common all through the summer, spring, fall, whenever it's really nice weather. But one thing that I was really surprised still to see when I came to France was that even when it gets really cold, even when it's raining, you have terraces with awnings, you have heaters. This is the thing that really surprised me. You have heaters in the terraces because it's so cold you can't sit outside without getting very uncomfortable, but people still want to have their drinks outside. So bars and restaurants, you know, that might have like a drinking hour, a happy hour before, they will have seats outside still and heaters, and sometimes they'll even have like complete plastic coverings of their terraces so that people can sit outside and still be at a comfortable temperature while they're having their drink. This was really strange for me to see at first, especially because I come from kind of a mid-sized town in the US. I didn't grow up in a big city at all, so really even having a drink outside was a bit abnormal, except if it was summer, then, you know, you could go to a cafe or something like a Starbucks or whatever and you would have an outside area. Even places like McDonald's and, you know, your average fast food places have outdoor areas a lot of times, but you really only use those if it's summer. You don't use it, I mean, if it's even slightly cold, you're indoors. So when I first moved to France, it was kind of October, November, so it was fall. It was still okay to be outside, but it started getting cold quite quickly, and I expected these terraces to just disappear or to see no one in those seats. And really, except if it's pouring rain, there's always people on the terrace. And of course, if you have like the closed-in terraces, even when it's pouring rain, there's people on the terrace. They just add those heaters, they turn those on, and then it's actually quite comfortable to still sit outside and have your drink on a terrace. I'm gonna have to put my coffee down for the second thing that I noticed because I have to give you a little bit of a demonstration. So another thing that I noticed that's different between what I'm used to growing up and France is book publications, but more specifically, the spines of books. I'm really hoping this is gonna be new to a lot of you guys, even if you watch a lot of these types of videos, because this has been new to a lot of people I've talked to. The titles on the spines are written in the opposite direction. So for example, here is an English book. You have the front, this is the way you open it, all the pages, and then the spine is written like this. So this is the way you turn it. Here's a French book, and here's the cover, the pages, and the spine is written in this direction. I hope this is focusing, but the text is faced this way. So if you're going to have stacks of books and you're gonna stack them on top of each other, with the English books, you would stack them like this, where the cover is up. The French books, you would stack them like this, where the cover is down, because the text is written the opposite way. I really hope I'm demonstrating this properly. I don't know why either. And this book is actually, this is published in the UK, so it seems, from what I can tell, it seems to be Anglophone, like English language materials. The publishing companies publish them this way. But in France, every book that I found in France that's a French language and published in France from a French publishing company, they always publish them where it's faced the opposite way, so you go cover down. I really would love it if you would leave me in the comments below if you come from a different country from France or the US or the UK, since this was published in the UK. If you come from Spain or from Italy or from China or from Russia or Brazil or just anywhere, can you please tell me what way is the spine? Is it like this, like the English language, or is it like the French language? Because I would love to know if it's a specific French thing or if maybe English publication is the unicorn there. When I discovered this, it was so weird to me. I thought that the book that I had, because I think it was Le Petit Prince, the Little Prince, the first one that I noticed it, and I bought it in France when I was still living in the US. So I brought it back, I was reading it, and I realized it was not like the right way. It wasn't the way I was used to. So I thought I'd just like gotten a book that was printed weirdly or something. And then I started really paying attention, and now of course I live here. My bookshelves are half my books and half my husband's books, and you know, there's a huge mix between both of our halves of French and English language. So I've noticed it's just a very standard thing in both languages. So there is a strange one for you that is different, and I never saw a book published like that in my life before coming to France. As usual, I'm talking about France, so I have to put something related to food on this list. So this point is kind of separated in two, and it's about dessert. Both of them are about dessert. I haven't tested this at every French restaurant, of course, but from my experiences, the average French restaurant will have on their dessert list a café gourmand. And this is something I had never seen before. A café gourmand is where you have a coffee, and I think it's usually 3 or 4 little like bite-sized desserts. So you might have like a little like chocolate cakey sort of thing. You might have a little like patisserie sort of, you know, cream-filled something. But basically it's just like little bites of dessert with a coffee. It's potentially the most brilliant food-related invention on the planet, because you get both your coffee and your dessert without like having a huge plate of dessert. And of course, when I say coffee, I'm referring to more of like an espresso style coffee, because in France, when you say café, when you say coffee, that's what you mean. And if you want something else, like a bigger coffee, an Americano or something like that, you have to actually use the name of it. The second kind of dessert related thing that I definitely experienced for the first time in France was seeing cheese on a dessert menu. Now I know this is a very controversial topic, because I have said before that cheese is kind of like part of the dessert, and a lot of people do not agree. They think it's very much like a course between the dinner and the dessert portions of the meal. That's totally valid, obviously, because if you have a full course meal, that is, you know, the order they go in. But I have seen on more than one menu in France where it's a 3-course menu. So they have some options for your appetizer, some options for your main plate, and then some options for dessert. So there's no 4 courses or 5 courses or anything. There's just 3 courses. And sometimes, very often, they will have cheese as an option for your dessert. I don't think associating cheese anywhere near dessert is ever gonna get normal to me. And, you know, seeing that some people will actually choose that, you know, if they're gonna pick 3 courses, they'll pick cheese as their dessert portion. It's never not gonna be strange to me. It's just very different from how I kind of grew up eating cheese and thinking about cheese. You know, it's savory, it's not sweet. So I never associated it with dessert, but that is something that I see quite a lot here, and I definitely never saw before. In terms of grocery stores, there's actually probably quite a few things that I could, if I thought really hard, I could put on a list of things that I never saw before France. But it's been so long now, I've been here 3.5 years, a lot of stuff I've just forgotten, and now it's just become normal because I do my grocery shopping every week, and I've forgotten what used to be strange. But one thing that I can definitely say was not my norm growing up is eggs outside of the fridge. Seeing this for the first time blew my mind so much that I had to look it up, because I just knew there had to be a reason why in France, as well as a lot of other European countries and probably a lot of other countries in the world, eggs are kept outside of the fridge, and in the US we keep them in the fridge always. That is like a must. And it actually has to do with how the eggs are like prepared. So by the time they get to the grocery stores in the US, they've undergone a lot of treatments for, I guess, like sterilization treatments and things, to where they've lost like part of their protective coating or whatever. I don't remember all of the details at this point. You'll have to Google it if you want to know. But basically they have to be kept in the fridge in the US because they don't have that protective shell, so they will go bad if you leave them outside of it. But in France, they're not processed that way, and therefore you can actually store them outside of the fridge, and that's totally fine and that's totally normal. So that's what I've been doing. But I still remember the first couple of times I bought eggs, I wanted so badly to put them in the fridge because something in me was just telling me that's not right. Like, they need to go in the fridge in the same way that you buy cheese and you put it in the fridge. I wanted so badly to put it in the fridge. A side note on this, I did live in the UK before France, and if I remember right, it was the same in the UK. But when I was living in the UK, I can honestly say I did not buy eggs at all. I don't remember ever buying eggs. I don't know why. It just wasn't something I typically cooked with, so I never bought eggs. So I can't actually speak for that if it was that way in the UK or not. All I know is that my first experience buying eggs and leaving them outside of the fridge was when I've been living in France. The last thing on this list I did not discover in Paris. I actually discovered it for the first time when visiting my in-laws, because it's that way all in the countryside regions, at least where they come from, but I've seen it all over in different parts of France as well. So I think it's pretty typical. Again, comments, let me know if that's your experience as well. But houses here are more often than not completely fenced in. So the entire lot, backyard, front yard, around the house, everything is contained with a fence. And then obviously you have gates, you know, in the driveway so that you can drive in and out and, you know, park your car in your garage, because everything is completely fenced in. This is the typical thing as far as I have been able to tell. Whereas in the US, I grew up definitely in the suburbs. I grew up in a little subdivision. It was kind of your, I guess, stereotypical American living, you know, kind of area, and I had never seen this. Where I grew up, it was very common to have a fenced-in backyard, especially if you had an animal. You would very often have a fenced-in backyard, but I have never seen a front yard fenced in, and I had never seen a house that had a complete like fence around backyard, front yard, everything. I do know that sometimes people who have kind of bigger houses and bigger like land, sometimes they'll have like a big fence around it and a gate, but it's normally quite fancy, a little bit posh. You know, the idea of that, the look of that in my head. I really wish I had a picture that I could just insert here. If I do, I'll insert here, but I don't think I do because it feels a little bit weird to take a picture of someone's home. But I've seen these in all different types of styles. I don't think it's for security. I don't think it's for necessarily privacy. I mean, it does add some privacy, but I don't think that's like the point of it. I think it's really just kind of a typical thing. Like, this is my home, including the yard. Whereas in the US, the front yard is, in my experience, is just open. I mean, you're not supposed to go walking in someone else's front yard, but there's no actual physical barrier to stop anyone from doing so. And then sometimes the backyard will have a fence. I'd actually be really curious to know if this is kind of a newer trend, like in the past, you know, few decades, people have been building fences like that as a kind of a style thing or a fashion thing, or if it's just for a very long time, that's how people have done it. I don't know, but it's very interesting. And it's definitely something that is a striking difference between the kind of suburb area where I grew up in the US versus the kind of suburbs, countryside of France. So there you have it. There are the 5 things that I decided to talk about for today, but of course there are tons of other things I could add to this list. If you want to see a part 2 to this, definitely just let me know in the comments. And I'm very eager to read all of your feedback in the comments as well. If these things were totally normal to you, if they're totally weird to you, if there are other things kind of related to these things that you've also experienced, definitely let me know in the comments below. I really hope everyone is safe and well and healthy and taking care of each other and staying at home. Please do stay at home. If you're watching this video while this is still going on, please do stay at home. Queue yourself up a nice long watch later list on YouTube and kick back and do some video watching. That's what I've been doing, and writing and reading and all these things. Just take some time to stay indoors. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon in another video.